Twitter CEO Elon Musk's SpaceX has restricted the Ukrainian military's use of its satellite internet service, Starlink. SpaceX, Musk's company that designs, manufactures, and launches rockets and spacecraft, has been providing internet to Ukraine since last February through the Starlink satellite system. But according to SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell, the service was, quote, never meant to be weaponized. She added, Ukrainians have leveraged it in ways that were unintentional and not part of any agreement. And Musk himself tweeted, Starlink is meant for peaceful use only.
Speaking of Elon Musk, last week Twitter was facing a widespread outage after many users received a message saying they had gone over the daily limit for sending tweets. When they attempted to post in what appears to be a glitch, Forbes writes, the daily tweet limit is 2,400 per day, according to Twitter's website. I don't know that I've ever exceeded it. Maybe you have. Forbes reports that the outage appeared to peak around 5 p.m. Eastern when more than 9,000 outages were detected, yet more than 5,000 were still being reported after 6 p.m.
Musk sent an email to Twitter staffers telling them to, quote, pause for now on new feature development in favor of maximizing system stability and robustness, especially with the Super Bowl coming up. Musk did not immediately respond to Forbes' request for comment. By 7 p.m., some users began tweeting again as features were partially up and running again, the New York Times says. Now, Robbie, I love that we're putting these two stories together because it really shows the role that Elon Musk plays in our society right now. On the one hand, there's so much drama around Twitter, right? You know, there's just because so many people have so much emotionally invested in it, and he's taken such a big public stand there. But on the other hand, you know, this Starlink has really changed the game for the Ukrainians. I mean, so much of what they do there would not have been possible without Starlink. And then having Elon Musk come out and say, look, you can't use this for drones anymore. That's not what it was designed to do. And I'm not going to allow my technology to be used in that way, in a military offensive way. I think that that's really admirable. And it just sort of shows the two sides of him, I think. You know, on the one hand, loving to be at the forefront of these cultural battles, taking up these big fights. But on the other hand, you know, having a very serious and considered approach to the technology that he's created and how it's used.
This is so funny because you're usually very critical of Elon Musk, and I'm somewhat supportive, at least, of I think what he's trying to do on Twitter. And here I disagree. I think it is not a good idea to shut off Ukraine's access to this, to Starlink. I find the idea that he would try to draw some line between its use. Well, this is using it for peace, and this is I mean, the country's being invaded. So of course, like by using the internet, it is fighting back in that invasion. And if you didn't understand that was what was going to be happening, I don't think you thought it through. But I have no problem, and in fact think it is good for Elon Musk, if he wants to offer this internet service to the people of Ukraine. Elon Musk, unlike the U.S. government, is a private actor. I think people are free to give their own resources of their own volition if it makes them money, if it's a good business deal, if it's just something they feel morally compelled to do. I think it's fine. Again, Ukraine is the victim of the invasion, so I think they have every right to defend themselves, and if people want to freely exchange to support that, that's fine. What I object to is the U.S., you know, which is using our resources against in many cases against the will of the American people, and also doing it without having any kind of diplomatic plan to bring the conflict to a close. And in fact, when, you know, Biden administration officials are actually admitting what we're doing, they suggest that the goal really isn't simply the defense of Ukraine, but some kind of longer struggle to remove or hope Putin falls from office, which is very, very not well thought out and unlikely to happen. So I object to all of that stuff. I think it's perfectly fine and appropriate for Elon Musk to give them internet, even if that's how drones are being coordinated, obviously.
So you feel that he doesn't have the right to say, look, I'm providing this service, but only under these conditions?
He has the right. No, I absolutely, of course he has the right. We all have the right to use, you know, to marshal whatever resources that are ours on Ukraine's behalf, or not do it if we don't feel like doing it. He doesn't have to do it, but I don't think something has changed now that it's like, oh, I mean, he can make whatever decision he wants, but I find it a little silly to say that, oh, well, I'm not okay giving them this technology if they're using it to fight back. Like, they're being invaded, so of course they're using it to fight back.
I thought it was a really interesting and important distinction to say, look, it's one thing to use it for defensive purposes. It's another thing to use it for drones, to shoot drones possibly into Russia itself. It was also very interesting to me. I don't remember if this was 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Elon Musk tweeted out a proposal for how to end the war in Ukraine, which I remember we discussed on the show, and both of us thought this was a great proposal and probably going to be something along the lines of how this conflict ultimately ends. He said something, it was pretty close to actually the conditions Putin set for immediately withdrawing from Ukraine 2 weeks into the conflict. It was something along the lines of, Crimea stays part of Russia, the Donbass is an independent region, and NATO commits to Ukraine commits to neutrality, not to join NATO. And the response from the Ukrainians, which they were tweeting, many of them while using Starlink, right? To tweet out their disgust at him. One of the ambassadors just literally tweeted at him, "F you," to this man who has, from his own personal fortune, paid something like $80 million in order to assist their war effort, simply for hazarding the idea that there's going to have to be some sort of diplomatic end to this, and this is sort of what it's probably going to look like. I remember feeling extremely disgusted with that response, just the lack of gratitude to this person who has done so much for you. And, I remember in that moment, Robbie, having a moment kind of like what you just sort of alluded to. I was thinking to myself, don't make me defend Elon Musk. Like, I'm not the person to do that, but I felt really called to do so because, I'm sorry, if you've spent $80 million of your own personal fortune to provide a life-saving technology to a country under threat, you get to obviously have a say. Like, you do. You fought your way into that conversation.
No, the Ukrainian government should be grateful. Its ministers should not be yelling at Elon Musk because what he's done for them is absolutely incredible. I don't think he's obligated to do it. He doesn't have to do it. So that was a bad solution. Also, none of us have to listen to the most hawkish Ukrainian government officials, including Zelensky himself. None of us have to say, okay, yes, total war. We're going to have World War III over this issue. That is naive. That is something the U.S. government should not listen to. We should be doing some version of the Elon Musk plan. I think it's fine for people of their own volition to help defend Ukraine in the meantime. That meantime should be ending now. The U.S. government's role should be to help make the diplomacy happen. Like, that's the thing they're supposed to be doing. And, of course, they're marching lockstep with Zelensky or humoring his idea that this is going to be a total war with Russia that will eventually result in Russia's defeat and the overthrow of the Putin regime, which we all know is not going to happen. And we would have questions about whether that was even desirable if it did happen, because who knows whether Putin would be replaced with someone who is friendlier to the West, or we could have someone more unstable and more dangerous. So that doesn't make any sense. I absolutely think the plan he put out, like you said, was very good. Was moderate. Was probably something most people, again, where are the American people on this? I think they're in the, I don't think anybody is rooting for, most people, they're not rooting for Russia to be, or for Ukraine to lose and be defeated and conquered, but they have some really valid questions about how long the U.S. is going to have this. Any amount of money there's no end in sight. We're going to keep funding this as long as it goes on, and we're not going to do anything to push for peace. I think that's something that's not acceptable to people and is actually part of what the Republican Party has seized on this right now better than the Democratic Party, had made it a part of the leadership fight. And I think it's because they, unlike Democrats, are successfully on the pulse of the American people on this issue. Not every issue, on this issue.
100%. Now, getting back to the much less important question of Twitter, I've also noticed that some people now seem to have the capability of tweeting more than 280 characters. You're seeing these like little paragraphs. It's sort of turning almost Tumblr-esque now. I am extremely against this, Robbie. Where are you on this question?
I mean, I don't like it either, but I assume this is going to be one of these changes, one of these social media tweaks, where we all say, this is terrible, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, I can't stand this, I'm going to, shoot myself if I have to put up with this. And then like 5 days later, we'll all say, no, it's fine. But we'll see.
Yes, I remember I had that when Twitter went from 140 characters to 280 for a week. I was like, I will never tweet more than 140 characters. And then instantly, like, all of my resolve disappeared.
I remember Facebook's news feed when that came out. I was like, what is this? This is crazy. Who wants this? And now it's it's hard to even imagine the platform apart from the news portal. All right, that does it for us on this subject. We'll be back with more Rising in just a minute. Please stay tuned.